Against the Bills, Coach Mike McDaniel said on Wednesday, now Tua has been in concussion protocol since December 26th after suffering his second documented concussion of the season the day before in a loss to the Green Bay Packers. McDaniel said that Tua has not been cleared to resume any sort of football activities, and that because of that amount of time he's already missed, McDaniel is able to rule him out. The rookie, Skylar Thompson, will lead the Dolphins into Buffalo this weekend. Dan, I realize this is a loaded question, but is Tua the future at quarterback for Miami?
You can't say that right now. No, he's not right now. You cannot say that unequivocally. And I hate saying that, Molly. I'm such a fan of Tua, on and off the field. You guys know I have championed Tua. But Absolutely. It's unfair to sit here and say that he's their guy. Part of this conversation goes back to college, right? Because coming out of college, it was the injury concern with the ankle and then the hip. And the hip was that big one. Remember the hip? And people were saying, like, you might get 7 to 10 years of an NFL playing career out of Tua Tagovailoa. And now in the NFL, it's this new injury history. It's the reality of, man, 2 documented concussions over a month, and everyone assumes that there's that third one. And if you're an organization sitting there going, it's unfair to sit there and say, well, that's our guy because of those injuries. And that's the only reason, though. That's the only reason you sit there and have that conversation about Tua, because the reality is when Tua is on the field, and it's important to point this out to people, right? When Tua is on the field this year, that's the best offense in the NFL. It's the best offense in the NFL in yards per play. Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, they're second. Josh Allen and the Bills, they're third. Tua led the NFL. When he played, he led the NFL in yards per attempt, yards per completion, touchdown percentage, passer rating. So you sit there and go, we found our guy. Like, this is our guy. We got the quarterback to go head-to-head with Burrow and Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. But because of the injuries that have transpired over the course of these 2 or 3 months in this season, there's no way as an organization that you can unequivocally go into next year and go, we're good. And I said this on NFL Live yesterday. I'll be interested to see if the Dolphins, because it's hard to turn away from him also. Like, it's hard to turn away from a guy and just say, you're not in our plans at all because of all the things I just rattled off. And I'll be interested if the Dolphins sit there and go, this kid's really good. Like, he's a really, really good player. And I know we have the injury. How do we protect ourselves? And maybe go get Jimmy Garoppolo. And then you feel good. Now, they both have injury history, but at least you feel good about having 2 guys that are starting quarterbacks and you could win a ton of games with. But you can't sit there and say he's your unquestioned starter for the future.
I'll take it a step further, Dan Orslofsky. I think his career is in jeopardy. I echo the sentiments of Christopher Mad Dog Russo yesterday. I think his career is in jeopardy. We don't want to point the finger of blame because certainly that brings into question people's intent, and nobody had malice intent when it came to Tua Tagovailoa. I want to make that very, very clear. I'm not surmising. I'm not making an accusation that the Miami Dolphins in any way had malice intent. But there's no way in hell that when he was in that game against Buffalo and he got knocked down and he got up and he fell back down, that he should have been allowed to continue playing in that game. 4 days later, he shouldn't have been allowed to play against Cincinnati. Because when you talk about concussion protocols or what have you, you know, it's not just about what the tests show. It's about what your eyes see, too. That does play a role. And it's a judgment call by someone other than the athlete to decide whether or not that athlete should be allowed on the field. Now, usually it takes about 6 days. They had a game in 4. Right. And when you think about it, that's only 3 days with which to prepare for that 4th day. You played Sunday, then you got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then you played Thursday. There was not enough time before he was allowed onto that field against Cincinnati. He went out onto that field against Cincinnati, and we all know what happened. He was carried out in an ambulance, ladies and gentlemen, all right? Was saddled up, positioned so his body was immobile or what have you. We saw it was grave concern, not certainly to the level of Damar Hamlin, of course. But it was bad. He's carted off the field in an ambulance, okay? Then he comes back weeks later. The point is, we're continuously taught that when it comes to concussions, it's that dicey. And considering that and the fact that he's been on the field, let's take the latest into consideration. He completed a game weeks ago. He played. Dolphins won. They were fine. And the Monday is when they noticed the concussion issues. It wouldn't happen on the field. It didn't happen Sunday while the game was played. It was after the game was over, after he took off his uniform, after he went home, came back the next day.
Tape with the coach.
And then they noticed concussion issues. This is serious stuff. And when you consider that, combined with his lack of size, how miniature he is compared to the football players that are on the field, smacking him with their bodies and putting that collision on him. And the fact that he's in this particular situation right now, this is serious. And I think that, I don't know, I'm not a doctor. I'll defer to them. But I remind you, the Buffalo game, 4 days later, the Cincinnati game. And then after that, after a game, a day after the game was over. Those are 3 separate lines of evidence provided to us about his concussion issues in the same season, in a span of 8 weeks. This ain't some situation where he had a concussion 2 years ago, and then after that it was a concussion a year ago, and then you got something now. No, this is over the last 2.5 months. We have 3 separate occasions that Tua Tagovailoa has had a concussion issue that has derailed him and kept him and has endangered him. I'm sorry. This is a serious, serious issue. And I think this young brother's career is in jeopardy before it's even received a chance to get started.
Your point, I could see like a lot of these underdog teams winning, but which is most likely of the home teams to be one and done? Here are the Saturday's wild card games. Ready, guys? Seahawks at Niners. Most people nowadays are telling you the Niners are the class of the NFC, if not of the NFL. They've won 10 straight, San Francisco. Chargers at Jaguars. Chargers get healthy, and Justin Herbert's good, and all those weapons are okay. Meantime, Trevor Lawrence been one of the best quarterbacks in football in the second half of the season. Then Sunday's wild card games. Dolphins at Bills. Of course, the Dolphins won't have 2. I think it's safe to say that would be the biggest shocker, right? Giants at Vikings. Lost very close to the Vikings on a 62-yard field goal at Minnesota last couple weeks. And Ravens at Bengals, and that's the heartbreaker if Lamar doesn't play, because that would really be a wild card type game, like either team's game. Without Lamar, I don't know. And then Monday's wild card game, Cowboys at Bucks. That's 8:15 p.m. Eastern on ABC, ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN Plus, and ESPN Deportes. So, guys, Key, I'll start with you. Which home team is most likely to be one and done?
When the most likely come in, it's hard to pin this down, especially against the San Francisco 49ers. But it's hard to beat a team 3 times in a season. I would think for me, most likely 49ers can go down simply because Seattle, who they've outscored 48-20 in the 2 games that they've played them this year, but 3 times, if you go back and you remember how dominant the New Orleans Saints were over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the regular season when they beat them twice the year Tom Brady went to the Super Bowl and won, they wind up beating them in the playoffs to continue throughout the playoffs. And I look at sort of the same thing for Seattle against San Francisco, where you got to see them a 3rd time now, and this time you're seeing them with a different quarterback as well.
And Pete Carroll is a great coach. Like, I love that pick. I think I think Seattle could play. I like San Francisco.
Okay.
But to Key's point also, the reason no team has ever won in the NFC 10 games in a row heading into the playoffs is you're due to get popped eventually, right? Now, in addition to everything else, they're kind of due. And I just think Seattle, a lot of NFC teams probably looking at Seattle like they're going to play traffic cop for us right now and stop this juggernaut.
Just
Who do you like,
sure,
Jay?
but you're not taking the pick, right?
No, I'm not.
Here, are you taking the pick? Are you taking Seattle to beat San Francisco?
No, I'm taking the Niners, but I'm answering the question.
Yeah, most likely.
I'm answering the question.
Yeah. What about you, Jay?
I mean, I the Jags to me. I mean, Trevor Lawrence is playing out his tail, and I give Doug Peterson a lot of credit. Their defense stepped up in their last game, got a pick six that really helped them out. Even with an injury, I mean, I still like the way Justin Herbert literally on